He flew for his country, then for the cartel. A quiet southern town, a skilled pilot, and a life that flew too close to power, danger, and the darkest corners of American covert operations. This is the story of Barry Seal, a man once trusted to fly presidents, who ended up orchestrating some of the largest drug runs in history. A story with no clear heroes, no clean conclusions, and questions that still haunt government corridors to this day. What drives a man to trade honor for infamy, to turn from respected aviator to notorious smuggler? And who truly paid the price when Barry Seal crossed the line between patriot and outlaw? Barry Seal's story begins not in the glare of scandal or the shadows of conspiracy, but in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Born on July 16, 1939, he was raised by a father who owned a candy business and, as some would later claim, held membership in the Ku Klux Klan. Barry's fascination with flight began early. By age 15, he was already piloting small aircraft, earning money towing banners, and logging hours while most teenagers were still riding bicycles. In 1955, he joined the Civil Air Patrol. It was here, according to some accounts, that he met a young man named Lee Harvey Oswald, a name that would echo infamously in American history. Seal's military career began soon after, serving with the 20th Special Forces Group in the National Guard. Some allege that his service extended far beyond what the records show, tying him to CIA-backed operations in Cuba and Guatemala. Early involvement that foreshadowed a lifelong entanglement with covert agencies. By 1964, Barry joined TWA and quickly rose through the ranks to become one of the youngest pilots to command a Boeing 707. Later, he would fly 747s, carrying passengers across the globe. But in 1972, that career came to an abrupt end. Seal was caught in a failed scheme involving explosives, and though he avoided serious prison time, he was fired from the airline. It was the first major fall from grace, and the start of a dangerous new chapter. The lines between patriotism and profiteering began to blur. Throughout the 1970s and into the 1980s, multiple reports and testimonies suggest Barry Seal was working with the CIA. Some claim he flew covert missions in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam, and Laos. Others tie him to Operation 40, a clandestine team formed for sabotage and assassination. He allegedly flew for Air America, the CIA's shadow airline, and ran operations in Nicaragua. Some of his companies, it is believed, were CIA fronts, giving him cover and freedom to move between worlds few civilians ever see. By 1976, Barry had entered the drug trade, starting with marijuana and escalating quickly to cocaine by 1978. The rewards were staggering. Flying aircraft laden with Colombian cocaine for the Medellín Cartel, he made as much as $500,000 per flight. His contacts now included some of the most dangerous drug traffickers in the world: Pablo Escobar, Jorge Ochoa, and Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha. At first, Barry used rural Louisiana as his base, conducting airdrops of cocaine. But law enforcement pressure eventually forced him to relocate to Mena, Arkansas. There, under the guise of aircraft maintenance and charter businesses, he continued his operations largely undisturbed. His fleet was sophisticated, his routes were refined, and his wealth grew rapidly, matched only by the number of enemies he was quietly collecting. In 1979, Barry Seal was caught in Honduras with 40 kilograms of cocaine. He served 9 months in jail, but avoided the harshest penalties. His luck, however, began to run thin. Arrested again in Florida in 1983, he faced a 10-year sentence. Facing hard time, he made a fateful decision. He would cooperate with the DEA. In 1984, Barry became an informant. He didn't just flip. He turned his access and flying skills into one of the most effective stings in DEA history. He helped set up operations that directly targeted the Medellín Cartel. His most infamous contribution came in the form of a photograph taken during a sting flight, showing Nicaraguan soldiers assisting cartel members in loading cocaine onto his plane. That image was used by the Reagan administration to support claims that the Sandinistas were trafficking drugs into the United States, a key element in justifying U.S. intervention in Central America. The plane used in that sting, a C-123K, would later appear again in the Iran-Contra scandal. By then, Barry Seal's world had grown infinitely more dangerous. He was a man who knew too much. He had connections to Oliver North, to retired General John Singlaub, and allegedly to then Vice President George H.O. Bush. Seal had become a loose thread in a tapestry the U.S. government could not afford to unravel. Despite his cooperation, Seal's sentencing in Florida was minimal, time served and probation. But in Louisiana, Judge Frank Polizzola sentenced him to 6 months of supervised probation and, critically, banned him from hiring armed guards. He was required to spend nights at a Salvation Army halfway house. For a man who had betrayed the world's most violent cartel, it was a death sentence. On February 19, 1986, Barry Seal was ambushed and gunned down in Baton Rouge. 3 men, Miguel Vales, Luis Quintero Cruz, and Bernardo Vesquez, were later convicted for the murder. All were tied to the Medellín Cartel, but doubts quickly emerged. Multiple sources claimed Seal had a videotape and documents linking powerful U.S. figures to the drug trade, including Bush and his son Jeb. After his death, it's alleged that FBI and CIA agents arrived at the scene before local law enforcement, seizing briefcases and film from Seal's car before local law enforcement could document them. His family, particularly his widow Debbie, was warned to stay silent. And then came the tax claim, $29 million levied against his estate, leaving his family financially devastated. For some, Barry Seal was a criminal who got what he deserved. For others, he was a patriot, used and discarded by the very institutions he served. His legacy is portrayed across pop culture. Tom Cruise's fictionalized version in American Made, Dennis Hopper's in Double Crossed, and numerous cameos in series like Narcos. But behind the screen depictions lies a very real man who flew too close to truth, power, and danger. The case of Barry Seal forces us to ask, how far do governments go to protect secrets? When does justice serve truth? And when does it serve silence? Today, the name Barry Seal lives on in mystery and myth, but the facts are still there for those who look closely. He was a son, a pilot, a smuggler, and maybe a pawn in something much bigger. As you reflect on his story, consider the forces that shaped his path and the many unanswered questions left behind. Was Barry Seal just a drug dealer, or was he sacrificed to hide a much larger truth? We may never know the full extent, but one thing is certain: his life and death left a trail of secrets still waiting to be uncovered. If you found this story compelling, share your thoughts, ask the tough questions, and subscribe to uncover more true crime stories that peel back the curtain on history's darkest corners.